Shalom Havarim. Today I want to talk to you about restoring the original Hebrew of the book of Revelation. There's been a lot of interest in the original Hebrew of the book of Revelation online lately, which is why I wanted to address this topic. Before we get started, I do need to ask people to please consider donating to this work. For those that don't know, my wife is chronically ill, suffers chronic pain. She's disabled. I'm her caretaker. We are in need of picking up medication for her that is over $400. This is one of her pain medications. In addition, she has a procedure that she's going to be undergoing tomorrow, a surgical procedure, and our copay on that is $250 and $240. Sorry, we just don't have it. So please donate and help us out. And of course, you'll also be supporting the work that we are doing, including, I will mention here, the restoration of the original Hebrew of the book of Revelation. Also, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, click the notification bell so you'll get notified when new videos come out. Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you think we're right about Revelation being written in Hebrew, or that none of the current Hebrew manuscripts are the original? And also share this video with your friends on social media, via your email, etc. Share it on Facebook groups where it's relevant. Help us get the word out. Okay, so let me first talk about the book of Revelation and the original Greek of the book. Well, I won't say the original, the Greek of the book of Revelation, which is, frankly, grammatically speaking, some of the worst Greek that has ever been written. Okay, so let me make the case on this with a few examples. Let's look at Revelation 1:4. Revelation 1:4, grace to you and peace from he who is, and who was, and who is to come. All of that, he who is, and he who was, and he who is to come, is all in the nominative case. Nominative case, for those that are not grammatically savvy, most are not, is the subject of the sentence. You probably remember at least that much from your grammar classes when you were a child. So they're all like the subject of the sentence, except it's not the subject of the sentence. So the phrase he who is, who was, and who is to come is all in the nominative case. Verse 15, still in chapter 1, his legs were like burnished brass, as in a furnace purified. So the word brass there is in the neuter gender, okay? Because in Greek you have three genders: feminine, masculine, and neuter. Okay, so that's in the neuter gender, dative case. Now, dative case, the dative case means that a dative is a verb that refers, or sorry, a noun. It refers to the object that receives the action from a transitive verb. Okay, a transitive verb is just a verb that takes a object. Okay, that is receiving the action of the verb. So here the word brass is in the neuter gender, and it's dative case, meaning receiving the action of the verb. And then it says, as in a furnace purified. So purified is actually a modifier of the brass, but it's in the feminine gender, so it's a mismatched gender. It's singular nominative, meaning like it's the subject of the sentence when it's not, and genitive case. Okay. 11, chapter 11, verse 3. My witness shall prophesy for many days clothed in sackcloth. Witness is in the nominative case, but clothed is in the accusative case. So another mismatch. Chapter 14, verse 19. He harvested the vintage of the earth and cast it into the winepress, the great winepress of the wrath of God. So the word winepress is feminine, but then it's immediately followed by a repetition elaborating the same word, the repetition is the great. Winepress, the great. Great is modifying winepress, but great is masculine and winepress is feminine. So we have a complete mismatch between the word and its modifier. Okay, chapter 17, verse 4. A golden cup filled with abominations, genitive, with unclean things, accusative. So, and with unclean things, accusative. They go together, but there are different cases. Chapter 19, verse 20. The lake of blazing fire. Now this is real obvious. Blazing is modifying fire. Blazing fire. Fire is in the neuter gender, but blazing is in the feminine gender. So obviously this is get a big red mark on your page if you were a Greek student learning Greek. Chapter 20, verse 2. And he sees the dragon. The dragon is in the accusative case. The old serpent, which is repeating the dragon, is the same thing. The old serpent, and the old serpent is in the nominative case. So it says dragon, accusative case, and then restates the subject or the object, the old serpent. And the serpent is nominative, who is the devil and Satan and bound him. Chapter 21, verse 9. Chapter 21, verse 9. 7 angels holding the 7 bowls filled with the 7 last plagues. So the bowls are filled, but the bowls are in the accusative case, and the filled is the genitive case. And then chapter 22, verse 5. They have no need of lamplight, nor of sunlight. Lamplight is genitive and sunlight is accusative. Now these are just a few examples. Charles Cutler Torrey gave these examples to make his case. And what he said was, he said that it swarms with major offenses against Greek grammar. He refers to it as linguistic anarchy, and he says the grammatical monstrosities of the book in their number and variety, and especially in their startling character, stand alone in the history of literature. That's how bad the Greek is of the book of Revelation. Now, there is a reason that the book is written in terrible revelation. If we take the view that the book of Revelation was inspired by Elohim, Elohim is no such idiot. Okay? But the grammar that is such horrible Greek grammar, it turns out is perfectly good Semitic grammar. By Semitic, I mean Hebrew or Aramaic. Now, we could debate about whether Revelation was originally written in Hebrew or Aramaic. They're both Semitic languages. They share the same 22 letter alphabet. They share a great deal of the same vocabulary with a little bit different vocalization. They're based on the same, many of the same 3-letter verbal roots, and they share a great deal of the same vocabulary. So a lot of the evidence that would indicate that the book of Revelation was originally written in Aramaic is also evidence that it was written in Hebrew and vice versa. I do believe, having studied the issue for close to 40 years, that the book of Revelation was originally written in Hebrew, that it went through an Aramaic stage. It was translated from Hebrew and then into Aramaic and then into Greek. And this is why, when we look at the Greek, we see some evidence for a Hebrew origin to the book, but we also see evidence that it may have been translated from Aramaic in particular, because both are in its pedigree. Another issue that I should address here is that because so many people online have referenced and compared different Hebrew versions of Revelation to the Peshitta Aramaic version of Revelation, it's important to make note here that there is no such thing as a Peshitta Aramaic text of Revelation. The Peshitta is a 22-book canon. The actual Peshitta proper lacks 2nd Peter or 2nd Kepha, 2nd and 3rd John or Yochanan, Jude or Yehuda, and Revelation. Okay, it does not include the book of Revelation. Now, many Syriac manuscripts of the New Testament were augmented, supplemented with the extra Peshitta books. And in the case of Revelation, the version of Revelation that's included either in those or in some Syriac Bibles or Syriac New Testaments that have been supplemented to include the entire 27-book New Testament canon, not just the 22-book New Testament canon. Their revelation comes from either the Harklean version of Revelation, which is a known translation from Greek, or from the Crawford Aramaic manuscript or Syriac manuscript of Revelation. Syriac is a dialect of Aramaic. So we can't really talk about a Peshitta Aramaic version of Revelation because no such version exists, and so far as we know, no such version ever existed. The Peshitta was simply a 22-book canon, New Testament canon at least. So recently, a couple of books have been, a book has been published with a bunch of Hebrew manuscripts of Revelation that have survived, or I will say exist. None of these are very ancient in their origin, but they are Hebrew manuscripts of Revelation that have come down to us. None of them, I've examined them, I have facsimiles of these Hebrew manuscripts of Revelation in my possession, and I have studied them, and none of them bear the hallmarks of being the original Hebrew of the book. One in particular, there is a great deal of fanfare around the Cochin Hebrew manuscript, or Cochin Hebrew manuscript of Revelation. And this is from the same group that has argued that the Cochin or Cochin Hebrew version of the four Gospels are the original Hebrew of the Gospels. Now, in a blog a couple of years ago, I demonstrated that that version of the Gospels is actually a Hebrew translation of the Peshitta, with some Syriac words even surviving in the translation process. Now, the Peshitta is a revision of the Old Syriac. I do believe the Old Syriac is directly related to the original Aramaic, or the oldest Aramaic. When I say original Aramaic, I'm not denying that there could be a Hebrew even behind that. But they're not the original Hebrew. And the Peshitta revision involved revising the Syriac text of the Old Syriac towards greater agreement with the Byzantine type Greek text. So this is not the original Hebrew of the Gospels, and I will include a link to that blog in the video description. I also recently wrote a blog responding to the argument that the Cochin Hebrew or Cochin Hebrew version is the original Hebrew, demonstrating that it too does not bear the hallmarks of being the original. I'll briefly look here at 5 examples that I gave that demonstrate that it's not the original Hebrew, but that it was a Hebrew translation of some text that had a Greek background. In other words, it might be a translation of some Syriac version that was translated from Greek, or it might be a translation of some Latin version that was translated from the Greek, or it might have been translated directly from the Greek. I haven't gathered data that pinpoints which of these was the case, but does make it clear that it doesn't bear the hallmarks of being the original. The first example I will look at is in chapter 2, verse 1. So chapter 2, verse 1. So in chapter 2, verse 1, and I'm going to keep this very simple here, but I'll leave a link to my blog on this, which actually has the Hebrew for everything written out for you. But to keep things simple, the Cochin or Cochin text has, from the assembly of Ephesus. I'm rendering it in literal English. But the Greek reading has a very unusual reading that says literally, the in Ephesus assembly, which is, by the way, completely unacceptable Greek grammar. Okay? It's obviously too literally translated from the same Hebrew construction that we see in Daniel chapter 8, verse 2, where we read literally the in Shushan the citadel. So the original Hebrew clearly must have read the in Ephesus assembly, not the assembly of Ephesus. Okay? So again, we can look at the Greek, we can see the Greek is terrible. The Greek is poor, very poor Greek grammar. We can see the Hebrew grammar that actually occurs behind that. We can see how it matches a Hebrew structure that we see in Daniel chapter 8, verse 2. And so we can see what the original Hebrew really was, and it's not what we see in the Cochin or Cochin text. Okay? However, the beauty of it is that we can see the original Hebrew behind this Greek text, the Greek translation. Okay, let's look at another example in Revelation chapter 2, verse 22. Here, the Jezebel is, there's a threat that Elohim will throw Jezebel into the bed. Okay? Behold, I am casting her into a bed. And this makes no sense in the Greek. Okay? The word bed there in the Greek just means bed. Okay? And of course, Jezebel would love to be thrown into bed, as it goes on to say, and her adulterers with her. Jezebel would be delighted to be thrown in bed with her adulterers, right? So how does this make any sense at all? Well, there are a couple of Hebrew words that could have occurred here, that would have occurred, one or the other certainly occurred here, that could be translated either bed or refer to a funeral bier. Okay, and so it makes much more sense that Jezebel was being thrown into her funeral bier, not her bed. And the beauty is we can see the Hebrew behind the text here. Is it the Hebrew in the Cochin or Cochin text? No. Instead, the translator of the Cochin version, the Hebrew translator, saw a text that didn't make sense and just omitted it. So the whole reference to bed is just omitted from this Hebrew translation. Okay, let's look at Revelation chapter 2, verse 27, which is quoting Psalm chapter 2, verse 9, which should make it real easy for us to see the Hebrew behind the text. Now, the Hebrew word in question here is a Hebrew word that means to break up, to destroy. The Hebrew letters are Tav, Resh, Ayin, Mem, and the vocalization that is given in the Masoretic text is shall break them. Okay, so that you have this iron rod that is breaking up the vessels, destroying them. And in the Septuagint translation says shall shepherd them, apparently having read the same four letters, Tav, Resh, Ayin, Mem, with a different vocalization. I'm trying to keep this simple for everyone by not actually going into the actual Hebrew or Greek. I want anybody that just knows English to be able to understand what I'm pointing out here. However, there will be a link in the video description where you can see the Hebrew, you can see the Hebrew vowels, etc. So the Greek Revelation chapter 2, verse 27, when it quotes Psalm 2:9, it agrees with the Septuagint understanding of the same four consonants to mean shall shepherd them. So it doesn't matter whether you accept the Masoretic text vocalization or the implied Septuagint vocalization. Either way, the four Hebrew letters are Tav, Resh, Ayin, Mem. Vowels are not written or were not written in ancient times in Hebrew. So the vowels that we use today were developed by the Masoretes in the Middle Ages. And those are the vowels that we use today so that we can write down what were understood vowel vocalizations. And so the same four Hebrew letters, Tav, Resh, Ayin, Mem, could be vocalized to mean shall break them, or could be vocalized to mean shall shepherd or lead them. Okay? So we can see a Hebrew text again behind the Greek. But what's significant here is that the Cochin or Cochin Hebrew version renders the words, the phrase shall lead them or shall shepherd them with in the Greek with a completely different Hebrew phrase, meaning shall lead them. Not the four Hebrew letters, the four-letter Hebrew word that we know should appear there in the Hebrew, because it's the word that appears in Psalm chapter 2, verse 9 in the Hebrew, and Psalm 2:9 is being quoted, even if we accept the different vocalization of Revelation. The only way this could occur is if the if the Hebrew translator of the Cochin or Cochin Hebrew version of Revelation, if a Hebrew translator was looking at the Greek and translated it with a different Hebrew phrase than the actual Hebrew word that is in Psalm chapter 2, verse 9. Okay, let's look at Revelation 12:10, where we find the Hebrew word for accuser, which is, we have the word Satan that is used in the Cochin version. However, the Greek text has a Greek transliteration of a different Hebrew word there. And it's long been recognized that this is a rabbinical Hebrew word that's appearing in the Greek text, and is clearly the Hebrew word that occurs or should be in the original of Revelation 12:10, not Satan. Okay? Again, you can see all of this in actual Hebrew in the video description, in the link I'll give in the video description. But I'm trying to keep it simple for the layman that doesn't know Hebrew, doesn't know Greek, and you can study it in more detail there. Another clear evidence is in Revelation 16:16, where we are told that the place at the gathering of the end times is called, quote, is called in the Hebrew tongue Harmageddon. Okay. Believe it or not, the Cochin or Cochin Hebrew version actually includes the phrase is called in the Hebrew tongue Harmageddon. There's absolutely no reason for a original Hebrew text to inform the readers that the word that it uses is called in the Hebrew tongue anything. So the fact that this phrase clarifying that the word is called in the Hebrew tongue something or another is clear evidence that it is a translation ultimately going back to the Greek and not the Hebrew original. It could not possibly be the Hebrew original. I wish it were. Believe me, I wish we had found the original Hebrew text of the book of Revelation. Perhaps the original text of the Hebrew book of an original Hebrew manuscript, or manuscript of the original Hebrew text of Revelation, is yet to be found. Maybe it'll be found next year in a clay jar in some cave somewhere, or maybe 20 years from now in manuscripts hidden away in some Middle Eastern monastery somewhere. Maybe in the Vatican Library. I don't know. But all I can tell you is that the Cochin or Cochin Hebrew text is not the original Hebrew, and that none of the Hebrew manuscripts that have come down to us bear the hallmarks of being the original Hebrew. But we can reconstruct the original Hebrew. It can be done. I think it's clear from the examples that I've given you that we can. It is possible for someone who is well enough educated in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek to look at the Greek and see the Hebrew, see the Aramaic and the Hebrew ultimately behind the Aramaic, and see the Hebrew behind it. I believe it can be done, and it's a project that I am willing to do, but I need your support to do it because it's certainly going to be time consuming. In fact, I'd like to do this and restore the original Hebrew to the entire New Testament, all the books of the New Testament. Some of them do have manuscripts going back to original Hebrew and or Aramaic that have survived, that I've in many cases identified. Revelation just isn't one of them. Revelation is definitely a matter of putting Humpty Dumpty back together again by looking at the Greek and seeing the Hebrew, and in some cases Aramaic that may have been translated from Hebrew behind it, and putting it all back together again. I am willing, I'm interested. In fact, on the side, I'm kind of working on it, but I need your support. I need you to let me know this is something you want me doing. And certainly it's something I'm excited about doing, but it takes time, and time is unfortunately money, because I have to eat, I have to have shelter, I have to care for my wife, I have to pay for her co-pays on her procedures and her medications, some of which are extremely expensive. So please donate to support this work. You can do that by clicking on the donate link in the video description or sending donations by PayPal to donations@wnae.org. Until next time, everybody, shalom.